Slavery in the ancient world and in Rome was vital to both the economy and even the social fabric of the society. A slave's life was hard. Most slaves were usually prisoners of war. Other ways that you could become a slave was to be sold for money by your parents, being an orphan, or being born into the family of slaves. To be in the possession of a slave, you had to attend the slave market. Slaves were put on display naked in front of a crowd of slave buyers with a notice around their necks. Men, women, and children were sold on the slave markets. Rich people could own a lot of slaves to perform any task that he needed them to do. Slaves were bought, and then they would become property of the slave owner. They would be forced to work without pay. Some slave owners were harsh and would beat their slaves. Some slaves would run away, and if they were caught, then the master had the choice to kill them. Slaves were not allowed to argue with their masters. They had to do exactly as they were told. If not, then they would be punished. If a slave killed his master, then all of the other slaves in the household would be killed as well. Some slaves were used for the use of private families or for the city's benefit. Slaves that were owned by families would perform tasks around the house. Women household slaves would be used as hairdressers, dressmakers, cooks, and servants for the rich women of the house. The slaves would be expected to cook, clean, and do other household chores and jobs. If their masters lived on a farm, then the slaves would have to do all of the hard and back-breaking work needed in running the farm. Slaves that were well educated would be used to teach the children of the house. The public and city-owned slaves had other jobs to perform. Their job was to build roads and other buildings and to repair the aqueducts that brought water to the citizens of Rome. Some also worked as tax collectors if they were educated. The slaves who had the hardest lives were those who were put to work in the mines. They had to spend long hours underground in hot, cramped conditions. The mines were also unsafe, and often slaves were killed in accidents. They would sometimes stay down in the mines for months at a time without seeing sunlight. Slaves worked in small workshops, making leather or silver goods or pots and pans. Slaves were also used in ancient Rome's galleys and in gladiatorial combats in the arena. They were trained to fight in combat and to fight other gladiators and animals in the Colosseum. Once bought, a slave was a slave for life. To gain their freedom, they had to be given it by their owner, or they could buy their freedom. They would have to pay the same amount of money that their master had paid for them. Since slaves were not paid, this was a very hard task to accomplish.